Okay, the final ice of the Maimer, ice Yud. So this is after the Arichas Maimer, that no doubt everybody is chazering. He just finished saying that in the same way that Kriyas Yamsuf was a achana for Matan Torah, it's also, and in the same way the Yetzias Mitzrayim is a achana for Matan Torah, but at the same time achana for the final Geula, the final redemption, so too Kriyas Yamsuf was achana not just for Matan Torah, Barachana for the splitting the Biki of the Nahar of the river into 7 streams that happens Lasid Lavai. As the Pasuk states that Hashem will extend his hand again, Yosef Adnai Havaya Shenis, clearly implying a connection to the first crossing of the Red Sea. The Nakuda, what was the Nakuda of the answer? Why is all of this relevant in the Geulah HaSiddur, the final redemption, when it's far beyond? What was the Nakuda of the answer? Pasach HaTziner, right? For Geula, and an English word to the McGill student, redemption. No, what's the big chiddush? Redemption, exactly. What does it mean? What's the chiddush of redemption? Chiddush of redemption is the breaking of the order, of the boundaries. Nature is orderly. That's the nature of nature. And it's predictable. And to have something that shatters that, and it's unpredictable, and it happens within nature, even it's not as nearly as dramatic as the final redemption, but the nekuda of going out of self. That's the whole point of the Maimers, Yetzias Mitzrayim, the matzah, the bittul that must precede the avodah, must culminate the avodah before his kafia, and then it's even after his hapcha, which is b'chol avavcha, the avodah v'resoimer, is the final b'chol ma'oidcha, nafshi kofel ha'kel, the 2 dargis in Torah, the 2 dargis of mitzvahs. Be familiar? Mitzvahs pre b'chol ma'idcha, mitzvahs post b'chol ma'idcha. Torah pre b'chol ma'idcha and Torah post b'chol ma'idcha. And in a word, both in Torah and mitzvahs, maybe the psukim even. Torah pre b'chol ma'idcha is what? That's b'chol avav v'chol nafshcha. What level of Torah is that? Anybody, please? True. So, but talk about Torah.
Was it Gilead Torah? You missed it there?
Didn't say that.
No.
Perhaps we not nothing didn't mention frame it that way. Torah pre b'chol ma'idcha is about fixing the world. This has an agenda for each limb and organ of the body and the larger limbs and organs of the world. It's the end of tikkun. It fills b'chol nafshecha, every limb and organ of the body, each mitzvah, nitna mitzvah. It doesn't quote this Maimon Chazal. We quoted a few times that mitzvahs are given only to refine the creations. That's the first level of Torah. Torah fills. And then the higher level of Torah is what? However, it's Torah lishma, not for the sake of fixing anything. It's fixed already. It's the expression of you. It's you. The anoichi of Torah. That's b'chol ma'idcha. Likewise in mitzvahs. In B'lashon HaPosuk, there's 2 levels of mitzvahs. There's what? There's key words. two levels of mitzvahs expressed in the language of the pasuk when it talks about mitzvahs.
Mitzvahs
Havaya and mitzvah sai. Havaya is ishtalshalos, Yud, K, Vav, K. Again, it's the same idea that mitzvahs have an agenda and they address different aspects of the world and of the person, first and foremost, refining the person in the world. In mitzvah sai, my mitzvah, so we explain, that's what we're talking about, that we should learn the Terech Hadasha, the Kuntas, Terech Hadasha Mititeitze, because the essence of mitzvahs is not about refining the world. It explains in that h'tשכ, as we were talking about, what's the point of mitzvahs once the world is perfected? What's the point of it? The answer is Adarabah, that the ikar of the mitzvahs is just the pure expression of God. That's mitzvah sai, that's b'chom ba'itcha, that already happened by Matan Torah, Anoich Havai Alikecha. And similarly, the holding in of the Bekiyas Hanor. Now, that's the segue, as it were, into the final us, speaking about Kriyas Yamsuf and then the crossing of the river. Anybody remembers? We didn't explain it in the Ois. In Baruch, what's the difference? Kriyas Yamsuf is the splitting of what? Malchus, and now use just English words. What opened then? What did they see? What's Malchus? What's the parallel of Malchus for the human being? Right. So what did they see? What speech? The creative force, the words that bring existence into being, opened, and they saw the speaker. So the Eibishter as creator. And that was Achon from Matan Torah, beyond creator. But likewise, so to make it even more pratious, I didn't say this. What opened by Kriyas Yamsuf was seeing God beyond creator, beyond his word. And what in general are they going to experience? What do we get by Matan Torah is God's thoughts, the Pnimius. The Eibishter's Machshav, that's invested in Torah. But now that's opening. Even the Machshav is opening. That's the Noah. So if the Machshav is opening, so what's left? What is opening to what? What a riddle. If the Eibishter's Machshava opens, so what's exposed? What's revealed? What's given? Huh? The Bala Machshava. Easy word to throw out. Okay, this is just Yesh Lekashas and Mashakosa Betilim. So this is Kapitel Samachei, the Rebbe's capital of that year. Tovshin Chavav. They were saying Kapitel 65. Mashbiach Sho'in Yamim. He silences, he quietens the roar of the oceans. She'ein Galeihem, the roar of their waves. And then the pasuk concludes, the nations of the world. Huh? What's that the pasuk again? Huh?
She'ein Galeihem Yitnu Kol, maybe?
No. Next words are what? I don't hear you.
I think Yitnu Kol, but sorry.
No. No. V'hamoin l'umim, and the multitudes of kingdoms. The matter is as follows: the roar of the seas and the roar of the waves. Huh?
That's what
I said, no? I just said that. Koi al elamatoyo. So this roar is elamatoyo. Why is it described as a roar? For the obvious reason, sha'idis and beteke v'izgabros. As we explained earlier, in elamatoyo, it's not just more or less kalim. It's the quality. That the quality of is beteke means intense or bizgabros and overwhelming and overpowering. What is that? V'inyanei ba'avoda ha'tokef ha'rotzoid b'chol ma'itcha. That's the intense desire that a Yid has to have b'chol ma'itcha. In Rebbe's words of Chav Ches Nissen, it is the Torah, but after we get in Kerem the Torah, we Kerem the Tikr. But there has to be the Rotzen, the Tokef of B'chol ma'itcha. That's the whole Tachlis. And that is Begdug Mazgalei Hayom, the waves of the ocean, Shemis'alim, that ascend, V'nigboim, and rise up. Shehu Inyin, that is what we spoke about earlier in Siv Zayin. Halos Man, that's the Avodah V'yid, not the Tikkun, but latest the Torah, as explained at length. The Avodah B'chol Ma'itcha. For who al derech masha kosa b'medrash, and this is similar to what it says in Medrash. This aliyah to Olam HaTorah that comes from the Tachten. The roar is an Olam HaTorah roar, but where is it coming from? It's the swell of the waves. The mata is ascending. That's us. So this is similar to what it says in Medrash Shikova mind that the Eibishter gathers the water together. We remember we learned we encountered this. So to see the Medrash Barichas, but the Nakuda is at the beginning. The Medrash is like this, something along these lines. In the beginning, the whole world was covered in water. And then Hashem gathered it and dry land appeared. So the Medrash gives them a motion. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not in the error, Yikovo means gather, but also from hope, that God hoped for something more and got it, as you'll hear. Namely, so it's a moshel of a king that had mute, couldn't speak, servants. So each morning, remember it's beautiful Medrash, the morning they would get up and they would praise the king with gestures and movements. So this is not, so the king decided to replace them with servants that can speak. Yeah. And the servants that could speak, then he's going to get a praise that is praiseworthy. They're not silent gestures. What did they do? They rose up and claimed the palace as their own. Oh, that's Yikov Hamayim. Then came the Mabul and washed it all away, restored the world to what it was, and started afresh. So what's the Yikov Hamayim? So the word hope is somewhere in this Medrash. You have to look it up. That the waters are destined to come back, something like this. At any rate, but what's the point of the Medrash? Moshel Melech Shabana Palterin. So it's a moshel of a king that built a palace, Veishiv B'Seichem Ilmim, and he placed in it people that were mute, that could not speak. Kach, says the Medrash. Oh, he tells us for us a bit. Mitchilas B'Riyasa Shel Olam, the beginning of the creation of the world, the praise from Hashem only ascended from the water, and it wasn't man who had free choice. It was nature itself that was extolling him, and that's a silent praise. It's silent because why do you think why is the marshal that it's silent? Point is, there's no choice. This is the Malachim, Mayim, whatever. I'm discuss here. It's not man yet, so why is it silent? Why is that the metaphor that it's silent? Huh? Dog doesn't.
Not actually.
Your guess is as good as mine. What?
Not doing anything. It's just kind of.
It's moot. It's silent because it's not really saying anything. If there's no free choice in the matter and it can't be any other way, so you haven't really said anything. You haven't contributed anything. So he replaced them then with what? With people that could speak, and then they rebelled. Then again, Yikov HaMayim, and then started the Avodah. But the point is, Vehayim, no. That matters. This is what the pasuk says, describing the outset of creation. The voice of many, with the sound of many waters, Adirim, mighty, Mishbereyam, the waves of the ocean. But it's all very toihu. He's saying is the roar, but it's a silent roar. It's a silent roar. Vaino Shamay Mikraim Ilmim. The Mayim is called now the Ilmim, actually. Here, friends have much deeper touch in Ilmim. Ilmim is because they can't express it, can't put it in words, because they're overcome with such intense emotion, they can't bring it down in words. She said, I'll take a farotza. That's the silence. Doesn't want that because it's all natural. Mashbiach, Al Pasuk says, Mashbiach Shein Yamim, they wish to sign. Shapiri Rushay Mashket, Rashi explains. So there's David, that Mashbiach means to silent. Shein Yamim, Hashem silences them. Shein Galeim, the roar of the waves. What does it mean? The silence, Hainu. He's Gabrus Hashuv ala Rotze de Toyu. So it's a pella. They're saying, what's confusing for us is that he's describing the roar as of the begin with this quiet. It's only quiet because it's so intense. It's so intense it can't be distilled into language and song in an orderly way. So the Eibishter's silence is that silence. Because what does he want? It's got to come bilamata. Haile is Gabrus Hashuv ala Rotze de Toyo. The Shuv, the Avodah is not this way, but to bring Mimamshel Lechus Lamata, Shedez Etuch Elias, Hamshachas Merubim, to bring Taka that Gewalt of the Merubim of Toyo. The Sha'in Yamim Mishan Galeim, the roar of the ocean and of the waves, but Kalim de Tikkun, to bring it into Kalim de Tikkun. That's the silencing of it, silencing in that not this one-way direction, which in the end is, Hashem, it doesn't have time from. It's a quiet, meaningless praise because it says the teva of Olam HaToyo, and now comes a Yid that has Bechira and connects to Olam HaToyo through his Avodah, and then brings it into Kelim de Tikkun, B'chol Ma'idcha. That's the Gewalt that the Eibush is waiting for. Mayim Nikraim Ilmim, Teikef HaRotzoi. Mashbiach, that the Rotzoi should come in, Kelim de Tikkun. So this is actually reconciling this question. On the one hand, the Medrash calls them ilmim, dam, they mute, they can't speak. And yet, the Pasuk, and then the Medrash brings Maim Rabbi Madirim, Mishbereyam. They're powerful, and there's the roar, but it's a silent, metaphorically speaking, sounding and saying that it does not convey to the Eibishter what he wants to hear. And that is the Dafke Yid that has Bechira, and Dafke Yid that chooses to connect to Olam HaToyo through his Avodah, Allah's man to Olam HaToyo, and he gives that roar and expresses it in his world, Ben Olam HaTikun. That's the Gewalt that the Eibishter wants. I know again, the Shuv has to then contain the Rotzoi of Toyo. The return has to contain the one-way trip of Toyo, the Kavana being to connect to this tremendous gilui, this bligvul, this gewalt, shein yamim, shein galayim, the roar of the ocean and of the waves, where bring it down, but Kalim, the tikkun mashbiach, he silences it, he translates it, he empowers us to bring this down in Kalim the tikkun, shezoi tachlis hakavana. So what does that mean? It means that Chosed is not a metaphor, he's on fire, he's a gewalt. He's not running around screaming, and he's not. It's orderly. It's what they call him the tikkun. On the contrary, he's often quiet. He's often not speaking, but he's the gewaldige doer. He isn't making a lot of noise per se, but he's changing the world with this boundless drive. And sometimes there has to be a lot of noise too. The bells at the bottom of the Kohen Gadol's robe, the meal, that's the end of Golos. It's best to be with I spoke about the mitzvah tanks in the streets, music blaring, there's that too. He's ready to burst into a dikkur any second. You just give him an excuse. I told you this was in it growing up, and we just passed away recently, but Aras Abransky was that kind of chassid. You could see the very orderly, davened, extremely organized person. The break of the Erev, but it was driven with this tremendous gewalt. It would manifest in some just break out in a second. With a record and a dance, given half the chance. If a fellow walks in, he hadn't seen, well, overseas it's a long place. It's a gewaltige simcha to see a fellow chassid. And that is the splitting of the river. In addition to the splitting of the ocean, we just explained that the ocean, the roar of the ocean, that's toyo. And so being opening up, it is dry land within the ocean, that's toyo. It is the toyo, but kelim the tikkun. You're walking through there in an orderly way, but where are you? And it is the toyo. In addition to that, that's b'chom b'itcha, level 1. But lasid lo, v'yiti b'kiyas hana lasid lo, v'yishiv v'nachalim dafke. So lasid lo, the river splits into 7 streams. K'mo b'shara amun, the Rebbe explains. Shrinyan zayim midas the toyo. So this is even more. There's 7 midas of toyo. Shegam heim yimshuchu b'kein b'tikun. They too, as opposed to the external level of toyo, the malchus level of toyo, the very midas of toyo, the pnimius of toyo, come over there at length. The ocean, again, the water is the word, that's the final word. But here's the Zion midas the toyo, how much the pnimius of toyo, which basically toyo is midas, it's toikef midas. Midas are rooted in the nefesh, deeper than seichel. Likewise, midas lemaila are rooted deep in the sheiresh. Then Chabad is. Shegam hem yimshuchu b'kein b'tikon, the design midas of toyo, that's the river, the 7 streams, should be drawn into kelim b'tikon tzad goydla ilid b'kiyas hanola gab b'kiyas yamsov, because of the great level of the splitting of the river over even the splitting of the sea. Nama dafka b'kiyas hanola sid lovoi. Therefore, only about then it says, "Benor Yavra Baraga." The pasuk says they will cross through on foot, and the pasuk concludes, "Shom nismecha by." There they will rejoice by in him. By daiked in him, hein beim husav atzmusay atzmus mamish. Zeh achon, that's all achon, even the crossing of the river, the gewaltige simcha. But that's achana to the ultimate hamshacha in kelim, which is what the Torah that Mashiach will teach. It comes into seichel. Zoy achana legili pnimis ha'Torah l'sedavai. And that is achana for the gili of pnimis ha'Torah. Asher Torah the Leilam Haza, as we said before, Hevel who lifnei terasa shel Mashiach is considered Hevel, substanceless, compared to the Torah of Mashiach. Yavav yigalenu v'yelechenu kamir satzenu begula amitis v'ashlema. You come and redeem us and lead us upright to our land in the true and complete redemption. No, so if we're going to go through a chazara of the whole Maimos, it will be another week. So you're all groaning even with the thought. So we'll just look at the kitzur. It's on the page in front of you. We should. There's so much here. This Maimon took like 40 minutes. There, but to say. We have to give a big thank you to the Mandichim, to Rabbi Yoel, and his helpers. So one of the great things about Rabbi Yoel was his humility, just incredible. Absolutely not a man. He reworked, not this, but look at the Sichas and the Mugadik Mamorim worked through a complete. The Rebbe's Maimer, to be able to do that, and it's the Rebbe's Maimer, it's not just his bonniness. After it's all done, you should know it's the Rebbe's Maimer. No, it's in every plot that he was doing it.
Presumably, he didn't take 4 cups of wine in Mashiach so that to be able to put this together at the.
So we did not drink wine. I don't know about Rabbi Yoel, we drank grape juice. By the Rebbe's Fabrengi, we didn't drink wine. It's unthinkable. We need idiot to drink wine. The early days people did. Maybe people then did too, but Bochum didn't. Okay, so let's look at the. I don't even actually. They had trying to think if every time I even got to the grape juice, I don't even know. So I had it afterwards. There would someone stop and say, you should say L'chaim, they pass it around. There wasn't enough wine for everybody. There's a grapes. And to wash, I don't even remember. We definitely washed. You went to the bench with the Rebbe. It was one of the highlights. The Rebbe's benching. Such a beautiful moment in Havdalah. Wait, let's look at it. Yeah. Veheinif Yodo, no, have a look at the Teichana in Yonim. Everybody has it, yeah? This at least will remind us of what we learned about, for the most part. Matzah bittul is what creates and allows for Yitzias Mitzrayim, which itself tachlisa is Matan Torah. And that's the emphasis that we say in the Haggadah Bavur Zeh. Because of this, Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. What's the this that you can point to? The emphasis, B'shar sheyesh matzah, when the matzah is before him, that's the emphasis, and that's integral to us, Hashem li b'tzeitzim Mitzrayim, to go out of Mitzrayim. Complacency and certainly smugness are what's the word? Not antithesis is a better word, but the what? No, there's a word for it that can't allow you to say it's Mitzrayim, It doesn't get off the ground. The common word, sorry. Explains this, but Yitzias Mitzrayim daily, it's B'shas Krishma. And the Rebbe took us through all of the Avodas in detail, the Av of B'chol Levavcha, and then the Av of B'chol Nafshecha. What's B'chol Levavcha, B'chol Nafshecha, B'kitzer? What's the difference? B'chol Levavcha, stage 1 is what? Huh?
Batel the enjoyment and
There's a geschmack.
Yeah, getting the Nefesh Bahamas to
Nefesh Bahamas has a geschmack. It's a tremendous avodas. It's habchatz. It's avodas for the soimer. Then comes B'chol Nafshecha. As a result of that, Torah mitzvahs irradiates his soul. And the diak is every level of the soul. That's the point. It comes down beprotius, the refinement to himself and the world. That's Oma Malak Alalmin. Then comes Aveda Elagam B'chol Ma'itcha B'chinas Sefer Kalalmin. So that was already a Yitzhak. But the first levels was Yitzhak, partially from the Nefesh Bahamas is dragging us in the wrong places. Kabbalah soil. The end of the Maimer, to them, the big arichas that Adarab in the first Kabbalah soil is a bigger mile than the second one. So then comes what? That's the true transcendent. Al derech Rabba, that's Rabba, Shalom did Vagbola, the Bali Tshuva, over Tzadikim Gemurim. You remember the diak there. Vayideze Nases, Kelim Shendig Muru Betahara, that's the Tzadikim Gemurim. Tzirichim Tvila, for Kodesh. For Truma, they're good. Truma is Memala Kalalmi. And even Seviv. Seviv. Even. But for Kedusha, Mila Begarmei, you need another tefillah. That's the emes of B'chol Ma'itcha. Vayideze Nase Gamam Shachim L'mayda L'mata the mitzvah B'fnal Yisra. Then to the mitzvah is transformed. How is it transformed? As a result of B'chol Ma'itcha, the Midat Torah, first of all, in Torah learning, Am Shachasim Sa Bligvul B'Torah Shebechinas Chachma. He brings the Eirei itself into Torah itself. Quotes from the Zohar. What's the quote from the Zohar? See this quote? Alter brings in Tanya, David HaMelech was Mechaber. David HaMelech was Mechaber, the Eirei of Bligvul, the noise not Torah in Torah. That's the emes Chidush. And in Kima mitzvahs, like mitzvahs Havaya, not just mitzvahs that have the agenda to refine the world, ale mitzvah Isai. That's matzah. That's the avoid of matzah, and then comes Sfirisa'im, and then comes Matan Torah. And then comes the bittul again, V'naf shekaf l'keltiyah. We wondered why he doesn't quote Nasa before Nishma. That's the same thing. Doesn't say it, so tzarechiyun. Hakoponim Sfirisa'im is min as'orim, is from barley. That's Michael Beheimer. Animal fodder, that's transforming the Nefesh Bahamas, engaging in the Nefesh Bahamas, that's serving, loving God with all your heart, with both inclinations. Before that has to be the union of matzah, that's the bittul harotz, and both from the skafia. You've got to break his conscious will here is Nefesh Bahamas. So he's got to break himself, he's got to bend himself, got to subjugate himself. That's got to start with matzah. Then he can engage in self-refinement. And then there's the end of the process of the 7 weeks. He reaches the 50th portal, Matan Torah. That's where higher than Seviv and higher than Mamala, that's the Tachlis Machol Ma'itcha. And then, as we just mentioned a moment ago, there's a Maila in that original Aveda, which has to remain throughout the Skafi of Matzah. Why? Because there he's really going against his own grain. Shall say to Noah, shall Yitzim say that's really, because once he enters the world of Kedusha, so he's already motivated. No, to go higher, it's not such a radical step. Even if it's a radical step, but he's pointed in that direction. But when he's not pointing in that direction, and he's struggling with his Yetzer Hara, and he breaks himself, there's a big mile there. That is a reflection of the Ava Rabba B'chom Ba'itcha in a way even higher, which is what Allah Asman B'chinas HaToyo. That's where that's what the Gewalt is. When he tears himself away from what he'd like to be doing, or doesn't do what he wants to do, or does what he doesn't want to do. So that's mamshit the bligvul. The matzah is the achana and remains throughout the avodah. Like the schapchatz v'lesoimer, not just the schapchatz v'lesoimer, but the ultimate b'cham ba'itcha. Gam legilin matan tevefin shal yitzir mikol in shal meitzadvol. That's the achana, and integral to transcending all levels. In a way we said that's harder because it's so good. What we have to change this world, we have to break, but that is the integral to the whole avodah, which is why we mention in other places Chassidus it brings. While we mention Yitzias Mitzrayim Lasad Lover. And that's the answer of Hey Lachmani Lachal Vasamar the Mitzrayim Lachem Oini. That's what we talk about, Lachem Oini, the mile of Iskafia Bulvad. Shalachei Nimtzoim Adayim Bar the Mitzrayim. We're still in, and it's Mitzrayim, but we left because they avoided of Iskafia, and it continues each one on his level. And that's how they merited Yitzias Mitzrayim through this. The Kud of Iskafia, which you know how it manifested itself then. And their response to Moishe Rabbeinu's call about leaving Golos. That's the most the whole Iskafia. It was tremendous, Iskafia. Everybody else said you're crazy. Life is good. Where you're running into a desert, you don't understand what he's saying. He doesn't speak clearly. That was the Iskafia. Then the Kud of Iskashus. Moishe Rabbeinu said, we're going. He said, all right, we'll go with you. Take us out. Extended their hand to be taken out. That's a merited Tzis Mitzrayim. Milas HaBitl should be Skafia. That's the tremendous mile of Bitl that's Dafka in the stage of Iskafia, and that's Mamshech HaBligvul, and it's connected to, and he sets in motion ultimately the Tachlis, the Ava Rabba, not the dry state of Matzah, and he just remains there. But he's in fire. Ava Rabba is the Toyo, B'chom Ba'itcha. Just like matzah, the whole achana, even though the state of Iskafia is incomparable to Matan Torah. So Yitzias Mitzrayim, the same model repeats. Is achana since then flows. Yitzias Mitzrayim, the is itself is the achana for the final redemption. Because again, it's the same nukud of Bitl Matan Torah, and Matan Torah also is the achana to Gila Pnimius HaTorah, and finally, as he said at the end, Kriyas Yamsov is the achana to Bekiyas HaNor, to the splitting of the river Lasad Lavoi, and then the final ois explaining Sha'oin Mashbiach, Sha'oin Yamim, Sha'oin Galeim. That's the quietening, the drawing of the roar of Elam HaToyo, where in Tikkun became the Tikkun. These are all oisias, have to learn them again and internalize. That's the main thing. So tomorrow, Beis Hashem, will start the next Ma'imah by Mashmini. It's a hemshech.